As the leaves from the trees dropped in the chill autumn of September 4th, 1981, a sinister gloom befell the childhood of Tim and Jeff Slayton. Their mother, Linda Slaten, had been violently attacked and tragically killed. There, in the sanctity of her bedroom, lay Linda, betrayed by an unspeakable atrocity, partially disrobed, savagely beaten, and horrifyingly adorned with a metallic hanger looped around her neck. She lay motionless, a haunting image forever seared into the memories of her grieving sons. Who could be capable of such a vile act? Was it a familiar face tainted by a hidden malice, or a brutal stroke of a random maniac? Welcome back to True Crime Expresso, where we unravel the shadows of solved and unsolved crimes and explore the strangest mysteries across our planet. In today's video, we thread around the bone-chilling mystery of Linda Slaten. This is no ordinary story. It's a labyrinth of deception so profound that the final reveal of her perpetrator will leave you shaking in disbelief. So, without further ado, let's dive into this case. In the heart of Polk County lies the bustling city of Lakeland, Florida, one of the most populated regions in 1981. A city teeming with prosperous businesses and populated residential areas, all dotted with beautiful duplexes, remnants of a thriving community, where close-knit families and energetic children thrived in legion. Every nook and cranny of this neighborhood was adorned with vibrant greenery, carpets of luscious grass at every step, painting an idyllic image of home. Amongst these scenic flora and duplexes was 303 North Brunel Parkway. This pivotal location was where Linda Slaten and her two boys resided, though their occupancy was unfortunately short-lived. Relocating from Hartselle, Alabama, the Slayten family arrived at their new duplex in Lakeland, Florida, merely 2 weeks prior to the tragic incident. This sudden shift led to a perplexing query. Did Linda unknowingly pack old grudges along with their belongings? Could her untimely demise have been the result of a string of unfortunate events from her past catching up to her? As the dawn of March 8, 1950 peeked its way into history, it graced us with the birth of a remarkable woman, Linda Patterson Slaten. By the tender age of 16, Linda found herself anticipating her first child, a charming son she named Jeffrey Slayton. Fast forward 3 years, the stork visited again, bestowing another gift, a second equally cherished son, Timothy Slayton. This unanticipated journey into motherhood led Linda to confide in Frank Slayton, the father of her boys. She dreamt of weaving a loving matrimonial bond, a tight-knit family she hoped they'd become. Thus, she managed to persuade Frank to marry her, setting forth their romantic voyage. However, reality presented a bitter twist. Their dream of a blissful family life took a ghastly turn. Frank, cloaked under the guise of a loving husband, unveiled his abusive side. Their home became a battlefield where Linda and the boys were the perpetual victims. Frank's enticing liquor and addictive substances manipulated him. As the sun set, this demon within him would dance, bearing its ugly face in violent rage. Recollections of Jeffrey and Timothy bear witness to this metamorphosis, as their father morphed into what they called him, the monster. Linda's heartstrings pulled her towards freedom. She yearned for a circuit breaker from this life of endless torment, and soon, the thought of divorce crept into her mind. The hard-earned liberation finally dawned in 1974, as Linda ruptured the chains of her agonizing marriage, a corrosive union that had eaten up 9 dreadful years of their lives. As this chapter closed and a new narrative emerged, Linda grasped the reins of her life firmly, rebirthing herself as a single mother to her teenage sons. With the fervor of a phoenix, she strived to be the best provider and nurturer. Her world revolved around her sons, whom she poured her love and care onto, painting the picture of a loving and resilient mother. Managing work obligations while tending to her homely duties, it was clear to see that she was grappling with financial strain, the kind that can leave even the hardiest spirits winded. They lacked the luxury of a car, thus, school commute for her sons, Jeff and Tim, was often a mix of legwork and hitching rides wherever they found goodwill. In between their school routines, the boys admired the rush of adrenaline and the joy of football. But a sobering reality always loomed. they often lacked a ride to their cherished football practice. Then, a glimmer of heroism entered their lives. Their coach, a man we'll simply call Coach Joe. A supportive figure who'd often turn up just when needed, shuttling them to practice and back to the edges of their hard-scrabble neighborhood. During their stay in their new home in the city of Lakeland, Florida, Linda was planning to have her mother move in with them for support. Judy, Linda's sister, frequently made her appearance. Their bond ran deep, often whiling away their shared moments over steaming cups of coffee, a beacon of tranquility in their challenging existence. But September 4th, 1981, would change everything. In the darkened hours of September 3rd, 1981, a somber eventide unfolded, casting its long shadows over an unsuspecting household. Jeff Slayton, fresh off the field from a grueling football practice, slipped back into the comforting warmth of his home, only to discover there was no food. Faced with hunger, he decided to visit his grandparents' house. Later, around 9:30 p.m., Jeff returned home, hoping to find his family there. However, to his surprise, the house was empty. It wasn't until 11:30 p.m. that Linda, his mother, and her younger son, Tim, finally arrived home. Linda mentioned her plan to play a game of cards with their neighbor, but before that, she settled in to complete her chores. As Jeff observed his mother washing the dishes, Tim, on the other hand, went straight to bed. Heaviness filled the air, the kind that follows an altercation between loved ones. Earlier that day, harsh words had seared through the typically tranquil home between Jeff and his mother, Linda, a split that had made the dwelling feel colder, sharper, one that they both wished to mend. Night embraced the home, its familiar rhythm a soothing balm to their earlier discord. As plates were cleared and the quiet hum of nighttime settled, Jeff found himself drawn towards his mother. Underneath the weight of remorse, he entered an apology, conveying his regret about their altercation from earlier that day. A moment of solace suspended in the cerulean twilight between conflict and reconciliation. Linda bid goodnight to her boys, her heart content at the reconciliation, not having the slightest clue about what destiny had in store. As Jeff prepared to surrender himself to the sanctity of sleep, he uttered words of endearment to the woman who made his world. "I love you, Mom. I'll see you in the morning." A promise of a dawn reunion, tinged with the innocence and absolute certainty of a child's faith, hung in the air. But the cruel, unseen hand of fate had other plans. Little did they know that what seemed like a common night of quietude would turn into a chilling stage for their last encounter. With no inkling about the impending doom, Jeff drifted off to sleep, oblivious of the sinister shadow of the morrow which was eager to rewrite his life forever. They say normalcy is the mother of horror, and in this household, terror was about to be uncloaked with the rise of the next sun. The morning of September 4th, 1981 soon rolled by, and at around 8:30 a.m., Judy arrived at Linda's house to have their usual Friday morning coffee. She knocked on the door of Linda's bedroom, but didn't receive any response. She thought Linda might still be asleep, but this was unusual for Linda, as she usually woke up before the boys left for school. Judy got suspicious and went around to find the window screen of her bedroom missing. And on top of that, the window was wide open. Judy then quickly returned to Linda's room. This time, she went straight inside, and what she discovered sent chills down her spine. In front of her lay the lifeless body of her sister. Judy was horrifically terrified and alerted a nearby maintenance worker to call 911. The investigators reached the scene within minutes to find Linda dead and partially naked on her bed. She had a wire clothes hanger around her neck that was used to strangle her. Her cupboard was wide open, but there were no signs of a struggle, and everything in her room was in its usual place. The police and the medical team soon got into action. Tim and Jeff were both awakened by the police officers and were asked to leave their home, which was now a crime scene. While Jeff passed his mother's room without seeing her lifeless body, Tim saw his mother for the last time. But this time, she wasn't alive. Their aunt told them what had happened, and both of the boys were sent off to live with their grandparents. Linda was 31 years old at the time of her murder. This distressing case fell under the sharp gaze of the seasoned Sergeant Edgar Pickett, who cut his teeth in the darker alleyways of crime with the Lakeland Police Department. Arriving at the grisly scene, Sergeant Pickett's experienced eyes were quick to discern pivotal clues woven into the fabric of the crime scene. It was within Linda's personal sanctuary, her bedroom, where the invisible dialogue of the murderer was etched. Amongst the numerous prints traced on surfaces, one alien palm print marked its sinister presence, emblazoned on the windowsill of the tempered window. Linda's body was taken for autopsy, which revealed several marks and bruises around her arms, shoulders, and neck. Her autopsy report further revealed she had been brutally beaten at first, then sexually assaulted, and then strangled to death with a metal clothes hanger. The palm print was the most important piece of evidence that was gathered because it could instantly identify the true offender with a match. However, a cruel twist in time meant that the promising forensic tool of DNA analysis remained a distant star at this point. Police had to overlay her whole family tree to identify the perpetrator. Frank Slayton, Linda's ex-husband, was the first person the police suspected. Frank and Linda had a turbulent history, giving the police reason to believe he might be involved. However, his alibi held up under police scrutiny. On the night Linda was killed, it turned out he was home in Alabama, so they had to release him. Linda's son Jeff was another person of interest. The police focused their attention on him when they found out about an intense fight between him and Linda the evening before her death. Jeff was brought in for questioning. The police asked him about that night and even put him through 2 lie detector tests. Since he was able to successfully pass this grilling, he was no longer treated as a suspect. Another significant figure in the case was Linda's new boyfriend. This man, whose identity has been kept secret, had a close bond with both Linda and her sons. The police didn't leave any stone unturned with him either. A thorough background check was made, and he was also put through a lie detector test. When all the checks came back clear, he was also removed from the list of suspects. Just when the police thought they were at a dead end, a promising lead popped up in September 2001. About a year after Linda was murdered, a new name came into the picture: Jimmy Ulmer, a 24-year-old with a sketchy background. Rumor had it that Ulmer had perpetrated a crime eerily similar to Linda's case. When the police looked further into his records, they found he was already serving an 80-year sentence for the murder of a 10-year-old child. Ulmer's method of murder bore a haunting resemblance to the way Linda had been killed, escalating suspicion. What's more, Ulmer was found to have been living in the same apartment complex as Linda at the time of her murder. This sparked a new direction in the investigation. This evidence led the police to believe he was the main suspect, but there was a hitch. Jimmy died while the investigation was still active, making a DNA match impossible until they dug up his body. Fortunately, Jimmy's mother agreed, and the police obtained his DNA. However, there was no match. Linda's loss was grieved and honored in a funeral, and gradually life found its way back to a regular cadence. Her sons, Tim and Jeff, under their grandparents' care, resumed their schooling. Tim returned to his beloved football ground, where he found a healing diversion. Remarkably, he remembers how the community rallied around them, offering unending support. Even their coach, Joe, would offer them rides home from school. Driven by a sense of hope and motivation, Tim decorated his room with his football's team picture, a constant reminder for him to keep pushing forward. As time progressed, Tim and Jeff matured and ventured into their lives. They started their own families, but they never let their mother's unresolved case fade into oblivion. They consistently coordinated with the Lakeland investigators, keen on witnessing some progress, some closure in their mother's case. A vivid, unsettling memory that Jeff holds onto even years later is the night of the incident. He stated, "I didn't hear a thing," and living with that reality is tough. After a painfully long span of 17 years post Linda's murder, there was no sign of inactivity from the police's end. Come 1998, Sergeant Edgar Pickett had retired, and a new squadron of investigators took the baton of probing the Slayton case. Detective Brad Grace, the new investigator, stumbled upon the DNA evidence initially collected in 1981, yet unexplored. This inconclusive piece of evidence was dispatched to the Florida Department of Law Enforcement's FDLE Central Crime Lab, instilling fresh hope into an otherwise dormant investigation. In 1999, the Crime Lab at the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, FDLE, forged a crucial breakthrough. they developed a comprehensive DNA profile for the unknown murderer of Linda Slaten. Armed with this vital piece of information, Detective Brad Grace decided to investigate the previous list of suspects one more time, this time digging deeper with DNA samples. Moving forward to 2001, Detective Brad scheduled a meeting with the Slayton brothers. As a necessary aspect of his renewed investigation, he took DNA samples from both of them. These samples were promptly sent for analysis. Upon receiving the results, it turned out that neither of the brothers' DNA matched the unknown profile. This meticulously executed step further ensured that Jeff, too, was now definitively excluded as a suspect in his mother's tragic murder case. Following this development, the spotlight turned to Frank Slayton. His DNA was then obtained and tested against the unknown DNA profile. Yet again, the results weren't congruent. Fast forward to 2005, a determined Detective Brad made a strategic move. He submitted the elusive untraced DNA profile from the Slayton case to the FBI's National DNA Database. This tool worked persistently around the clock, constantly cross-referencing the anonymous killer's DNA against every novel entry it received. However, in 2015, after a persistent 17-year investigation on the Slayton case, he retired. Upon Detective Brad's retirement, the case baton was passed to Detectives Tammy Hathcock and Russell Hurley. After spending 3 years digging further into the cold case, Detective Tammy discovered that the FDLE had made an extraordinary technological leap. They had developed a revolutionary method to potentially identify previously unidentifiable DNA. Seizing this fantastic opportunity, Detective Tammy sent the Slayton case's still unidentified DNA to C.C. Moore. Armed with advanced tech and a commitment to solving the case, Moore started comparing the anonymous DNA with a list of people who shared similar genetic information. She then combined these results with public records such as marriage certificates, birth certificates, and even social media information to construct a detailed genetic family tree. As the teeth of the investigation bit deeper, Moore expertly constructed 3 branches of ancestry to zero in on the suspected murderer, utilizing this intricate genealogical map to single out the person most plausible to have taken Linda Slaten's life. The finger of suspicion, directed by the DNA-profiled family tree, pointed undeniably towards the person who had most likely ended Linda's existence. The revelation was so astounding that it left even Tim and Jeff Slayton in disbelief. The truth standing stark and chilling before them was that Linda's life had been stolen by none other than Joseph Clinton Mills, infamously known as Coach Joe. As the name of the killer echoed, Tammy and Russell set out to delve into Joe's past, uncovering his criminal history. Among his deeds was a crime of grand theft, carried out through the malevolent forgery of a will. Though he walked free without charges, the authorities had seized his palm and fingerprints, evidence that would soon become noteworthy. Remember the butler's eye view palm print on the crime scene's windowsill, noted by Sergeant Edgar? Investigators embarked on a side-by-side comparison of the windowsill palm print, frozen in the scene of Linda's death, with Joe's palm print from 1981. It was an exact match. But to close the case, detectives required a recent DNA sample from their prime suspect. As if straight from a crime thriller, without alerting Joe, they cleverly gathered their DNA sample from a place where he would least expect, his own trash. Amidst the garbage, they struck gold. A piece of medical tape bearing potential DNA evidence was whisked away for analysis. 2 suspense-filled weeks later, the results came back, bringing an end to their wait. The DNA from that discarded piece of tape matched the murderer's profile, confirming that the man who had forever altered the course of Linda Slaten's life was indeed Coach Joe. In December 2019, Joe was arrested and taken into custody and brought in for questioning regarding a heinous crime. At the tender age of 20 years old, Joe claimed that the investigators had indeed contacted him over the phone. However, he adamantly denied any involvement as a suspect. His story, however, was nothing more than a web of lies the police saw right through. They pieced together a different narrative, one that painted Joe as a predator who had targeted Linda long before that fateful night, as he was often seen picking and dropping Tim off from practice. But what exactly transpired on that ill-fated September 3rd evening in 1981? According to Joe, he dropped off Tim at his residence and waited around until no one was home. When the coast was clear, he made his way into Linda's bedroom through a window, finding refuge inside her closet until she drifted off to sleep. It was then that he unleashed a violent attack, subjecting her to brutality, sexual assault, and ultimately strangulation. Fast forward to February 9th, 2022, Joe, now 61 years old, chose to plead guilty to the charges of sexually assaulting and murdering the single mother. In making this plea, he cleverly avoided the death penalty, but was instead condemned to spend the rest of his natural life behind bars without the possibility of parole. At his sentencing, members of Linda's family confronted him and demanded to know why he killed her. All Joe told the court was, "I am a good person." He didn't offer a response nor an apology.
Why? I just want to know why, Joe. Why'd you take my mama from me? I love my mama. We was happy.
Mills had no response. The family hoped for a trial and a death penalty. But on this day, they're finding some closure, knowing their mother's killer.
It's not over in the sense because he's still walking. My mom's not. And I seen the crime scene that's in my head every day. I got to live with that.
Through the heart-wrenching journey of loss and sorrow, Linda's two boys found strength in each other, bound together by the shared pain of losing their mother. In the face of unimaginable tragedy, their unbreakable bond became a lifeline, a source of comfort amidst the storm of grief. Unbeknownst to Tim, the treacherous face of evil stared back at him every day from a picture hanging on his wall. Little did he know that the very image he unknowingly cherished was a reminder of the man who took his mother's life. This tragic irony serves as a chilling reminder that darkness can reside even within the spaces we deem safe and familiar. As the pieces of this haunting puzzle come together, the tale of Linda Slaten stands as a reminder of the indomitable human spirit and the capacity to endure unspeakable pain. Finally, after 4 decades of uncertainty, the truth has come to light, piercing through the shroud of mystery and granting Linda's loved ones the long-awaited closure they so desperately sought. In the wake of this revelation, our nation is compelled to reflect on the depths of humanity's capacity for both extraordinary resilience and chilling betrayal.